Trees. If you open up your nearest window, you'll more than likely see some trees. But did you know that 78.2% of trees suffer from being basic, unoriginal, and downright boring? There are 5 distinct factors we have to look for in the perfect tree. Number 1 is the girth of the branches. Number 2 is the density of the bark. Number 3 is the vibrant assortment of leaves, as well as the complexion of their color. Number 4 is how hard is their wood. Finally, number 5 is the sophistication of the make of the tree. With all these in mind, we shall rank each tree accordingly in today's tier list, the Genshin tree tier list. For the tiers, we have the peak tree, the legendary trees if you will. Then we have the sexy looking tree. Then we have the simple nice trees. Then we have the looking a little basic tree. And finally, the bland, could use a trim kind of tree. With all that in mind, let's get into it. So the first tree we have is the Brightwood tree. The majestic Brightwood tree is known for its soft and succulent texture. However, even though it's soft, this does not mean it's not resilient. No. In fact, the Brightwood tree is known for its ability to endure even the toughest of climates. They also have nice poofy leaves, and although they don't have that many branches, the branches they do have are extra thick in girth. This sophisticated tree is also limited to a very small area of Sumeru. With all these factors in mind, and even if its robust look is not for everyone, I cannot deny that I think this is an impressive and downright attractive tree. It will therefore be going in the sexy looking tree. Secondly, we have the Sakura tree. Without a doubt, the Sakura tree is the most visually stimulating tree amongst the assortment we have today. But what about its other factors? In terms of the amount of branches and its girth, it's definitely on the more average side of things. However, the quality of the bark is said to be one of the most high quality, if not the highest, in all of Teyvat. Not to mention, the Sakura trees are said to be extremely moist in nature. Even with its few shortcomings, there's no doubt in my mind that this is a sophisticated tree. The first worthy tree of being the peak legendary tree. Next, we have the Koiwa tree, famously known as the tree that always has fruit on it. It is quite the interesting specimen. Due to it being one of a kind in terms of having the fruit that grows on it, it's clearly quite the sophisticated chap. However, this isn't all we have to look at. First, we must examine the bark itself. It is clearly very girthy. Not to mention its colors, although the trees themselves look quite normal. Its assortment of leaves definitely leaves a little bit to be desired. However, even with its flaws, the Koiwa tree is still a very nice looking tree. Next up, we have the cedar tree, also known as the fragrant cedar tree. It is widely known for its beautiful smell. However, it does also look like a very average tree, with its branch girth and density of the bark quite in the average line of things. And there isn't much of an assortment of leaves as well. The only thing that I can point out that is saving it is its sophisticated and aromatic oils that its wood is said to contain, giving its own unique use when compared to any of the other trees on this list. And fun fact, although primarily found in Mondstadt, there exist a select few cedar trees on Watatsumi Island with a slightly different shade. This fact will save it from being put at the bottom, but it is still a little basic. Next up, we have the pine trees. Now, I am a Canadian, so I have a slight bias for the pine tree, but not in a good way. I see them every day, so they do seem quite basic to me. However, putting that aside, the color is still quite plain, so there isn't much going on there. However, it being relatively unique to Dragonspine does definitely give it some sophistication points. And Pinewood is also considered to be one of the most girthy and well-resilient woods out there. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it stays at the top in terms of durability for the entirety of the list. It also does have a little more branches against the average tree. And I will say this, if you guys have ever felt pinewood, you'll know that that is some nice feeling wood. With all that in mind, even though I have a slight bias for them, I will say they are still a sexy looking tree. Next up, we have the sandbearer trees, located primarily in Liyue and known for their beautiful yellow and orange color schemes. They are definitely a sophisticated tree. The girth of the branches is kinda average. However, remember when I said that pine trees may be the hardest wood? Well, here come the sandbearer trees with their wood to challenge it for the throne. It is also extremely resilient to the elements, also due to the density of the bark. The sandbearer tree has very few shortcomings to mention, and for that reason alone, it will go right under the Sakura tree at the bottom of Peak Tree. Next up, we have an Inazuman Cedar trees, which is also known as the producer of Aurelia wood and located only in the vast Qingju forest. It is quite the sophisticated piece of wood, although technically a subcategory for another form of cedar wood. Inazuman Cedar, however, is slightly unique due to the fact of it having a lighter fragrance when compared to its counterpart, the cedar tree. Its factors, however, are all relatively the same. It's quite soft, not making it the most useful for construction. The assortment of leaves are nothing to write home about. However, it is quite tall when compared to other trees, but overall, it is still a little basic of a tree. Next up, we have the Amour Maple trees, the producer of maple wood. Now, right off the bat, this might be the best tree the Genshin has yet to offer. Its color scheme, right off the bat, is extremely gorgeous with its bright, nice shading of red. Its branches also have an exquisite amount of girth. Personally, I think it's just the right density of bark as well, along with the quality of the wood itself. Everything is fantastic. Similar to pinewood, it also has a very unique texture, which is pleasant to the touch. With all that in mind, there is no doubt that this is a legendary tree, probably the only tree that will go above the Sakura tree. Next up, we have Otogi trees. They are quite the simple specimen. Visually, I personally have to say that they may very well be my least liked tree. However, it does have a better looking Watatsumi Island counterpart. But what of its other factors? Well, it does have quite a bit of moisture and essential oils, making it useful for making a niche assortment of goods and products. However, all the other qualities are quite bland, if I'm being honest. It doesn't have much sophistication. The wood is not the most durable. There is a lack of girth. This, unfortunately, even with its few pros, is going to land it in the first spot at the bottom. Next, we have the mountain Darte trees, and they're without a doubt one of the most unique looking trees that Genshin has yet to give us. Its sophistication may very well be at the top of this entire list. Being native to the desert, it does have quite the resilience and resistance to the elements resilience, along with its sturdy bark. The only thing it really lacks is leaves and an assortment of branches. But this tree also has another unique trait, which is its aptitude for growing both well and easily, which is ironic due to it being a desert tree. Overall, its uniqueness and sophistication are what are going to lead it to being an attractive, sexy-looking tree. Next up, we have the Ethel tree, another native to Sumeru's deserts, and another interesting one. It has a very unique design, with it not having any branches, so to speak. However, just looking at the wood, you can tell that this tree is the producer of some fine, hard, sturdy, and moist absorbing wood. This tree's survival abilities are top class, second to none. With that alone, that makes this tree one to remember, and not to mention its sophistication to boot. It is also very girthy. However, its one flaw is that it doesn't have any leaves either. I think even with the few flaws it has, this is definitely another sexy looking tree. Next up, we have the Chinkset Bamboo trees, another extremely unique case, with them not having the traditional bark or any wood found on the tree at all for that matter. Instead, they have their own unique characteristics, such as, well, the bamboo itself being edible under the right circumstances when cooked. Aside from that, this may come as a surprise, but the bamboo itself is actually harder and more sturdy than most traditional forms of wood, making it quite weather resistant and resilient to the nature. Bamboo also does release a relatively nice fragrance and aroma, which I'm sure if anyone has smelled before, you know that bamboo is some nice smelling stuff. They do also have some leaves at the top despite the lack of wood, and with all this in mind, I will say that I do consider bamboo to be a tree, and it is a nice looking tree. Next up, we have the fir tree, a very basic looking tree, but let's look at its stats very quickly before we judge it too much. It has some poofy leaves. The structure of the bark is not all that thick. The branches themselves are definitely lacking in the girth department. It being as common as it is, I can't really give it any sophistication points. However, it is slightly more durable than some of the trees on this list, but at the same time, it's not something that I would write home about in any way. Unfortunately, although poofy, I am gonna have to put the fir tree at the bottom with the bland. Next up, we have the Carmopla tree. This list is really full of weirdos. Right off the bat, there are two different kinds of Carmopla trees, ironically, each with its own unique and pleasing to the eye color. And although they're not the most resilient tree out there, they're still nothing to laugh home about, especially considering how soft their wood actually is. It does have its own unique placement of girth towards the upper half. It having two colors also leads it to being relatively high on the sophistication list for the trees. A good mix of pros and cons overall. A nice looking tree. Next up, we have the Arigama tree, the most common tree found in Sumeru. Visually speaking, they are kind of bland. In fact, in my opinion, probably the most basic tree there is. But let's look at its other qualities. So its leaves are relatively nicely assorted and a little poofy, as well as the fact that it does have a little bit of girth, although it isn't anything to write home about. It is also lacking a little in the sophistication department due to it being relatively bland in appearance. A redeeming factor of his, however, is the fact that although common, the wood it produces is very sturdy, making it able to withstand some harsher weather conditions. With all that in mind, I am going to be putting it in the a little basic looking tree tier. And finally, to end off, we have, last but not least, the birch tree. Another one of the more visually stimulating trees, with its nice yellowy color. It also has a very nice assortment of branches and leaves, although in the girth department, it is lacking a little in the traditional sense. With that in mind, however, it is actually more sturdy and durable in the wood department, making it able to endure endure harsher weather conditions as well. With its unique design, it is also a sophisticated tree. With all that put together, I do believe that the birch tree is a sexy looking tree. And that, ladies and gents, is the tree tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed, and feel free to let me know what your top 3 trees are. My personal favorite would have to be the Amour Maple tree, but let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, take care, and have a good one, ladies and gents.